just now I have finished moving my Vimscript config to a Lua config. I'm sure you've heard that, oh, Lua, such a great language, it's so much faster, it's so much better, Lua plugins. I heard that all too, but was kind of scared to move over, and surprisingly enough, the transition was surprisingly seamless. Now, how did I learn all of that? From this blog. Literally everything that I needed to know to move to Lua is in this blog. I will leave a link to it in the description. Also, I got helped on the Vim Discord, so you can check that out. So, here was my Vimscript config. There's a couple of things that you need to know, which, at least for me, were the most important. So let's get to it. First of all, everything related to Vim is in the Vim, I guess, module, you could call it, or a class, or an object. I don't know what it is in Lua. And matter of fact, I don't know Lua. How did I write all this? Well, I just downloaded a Lua extension for VS Code. You might not be using VS Code, doesn't really matter. But yeah, essentially I installed this extension, and every time I made a syntax mistake, it would provide me a squiggly line. So I could essentially guess what's the correct thing is. So that's really useful. You get to learn Lua without having to go through lessons. So I recommend that. Not sure how you would do that in Vim, but it is what it is in VS Code. So, first of all, you will likely want to set options, and as you can see, I always fail, lol. So, as you can see, here are the options that I set. Usually, you access the Vim, let's say object, I'm gonna say object, even if that's not necessarily true. So Vim and then options, or turns out you can even just leave the O and it will work the same way. Not sure about that, but OPT works. And then you provide the actual name of the setting, and here you go. So often in Vimscript you would do set no highlight search. For stuff like this, which have no at the start to mean no highlight search, essentially highlight search is false, well, they are booleans now. So there's no highlight search. There's just the option of highlight search, which you can set to a boolean value, so false or true. Every time that you provide a string, well, it's a string. And then numbers are numbers. I guess there's not much difficult about this. However, one thing, sometimes option will not work. That is when you're assigning to global variables, like map leader. You would have to use G in this case, and that will work. Let's actually Lua Vim study. Yeah, that's my personal file for the notes. Here are the possible things. Usually the only three that you would use is these three. These three are important when you're reading the value. As far as I understood, when you're reading the value, you have to use the correct one. But if you're just setting the value, you can use these three. An option would be the most often one you use. Okay, now Vim plug works. Nothing broke, and it just works the same way it used to. So we made a variable here for readability's sake, because we're used to using plug. So here we assigning a variable to use as we are used to. Wow, that's a horrible sentence. But actually what happens is Vim function, and then we call plug. This is not usually how we call functions. Usually what we would do is do plug and then this, right? But the thing is, it has a symbol that is not allowed in this syntax. So instead of the dot syntax, what we use is the bracket syntax, where we provide a string, and this is actually the same thing. If you know AHK for some odd reason, you know that you can either object 1 or object 1 in pretty much every situation, as far as I know. And that is the case in JavaScript as well. So if you're familiar with that, you will know how this works. If you don't, you can watch a JavaScript tutorial and you'll understand. So now we just call the function, and what is this? We have the function, and then we have call. What's the difference? Essentially, let me show it here. So Vim function, and say there's the function of VsCode notify, yeah. And here I provide this syntax. I can call it the same way with the call, I guess, property, I don't know. But now I would specify the name in a string, and then its arguments. Well, I'm just passing brackets to mean arguments. You wouldn't actually type in brackets. So say there's some parameter like, I don't know, vim v count 1, and by the way, to access variables that you used to access like this, you access vim.v and then the name of the variable. Or use the function keyword. Why is call useful? Because once again, say this Vimscript function has some strange symbol that is not accepted in the normal syntax. Then you can just use call and provide that special weird symbol, because it's all good. And that is, yeah, that is the alternate way to use this. We could say, instead of function, we could do call, and then let's CS this to B, and that should in theory work the same exact way. So it's actually pretty stretchy, I could say, in terms of syntax. Everything works surprisingly, really surprisingly. So we call the plug begin, which we would do here. I haven't been looking at the Vimscript part of it, but I leave a link to my dot files in every single one of my videos, but this file doesn't exist anymore. It's on an older commit. If you're watching the video as I posted, it's kind of recent. If you're watching like 2 years in the future, I am sorry. All I'm gonna say. So then we use plug as a function and just provide the string of the plugin, which is the same thing we used to do before. Now, important thing to mention, Lua supports both types of quotes. So double quotes work and single quotes work the same exact way. Okay, sure, I'll explain it now. So say you need this, well, this character as a string, or this character as a string. What you would do, at least what I did personally, is wrap it in the opposing or the opposing quotes. So if you need the single quote as a character, you wrap it in double quotes. If you need the double quotes as a character, you wrap it in single quotes. And generally just use what you like more. I'm a double quotes fan personally, mostly for the reason that I like to use apostrophes in sentences all over the place, and having to escape them or anything of that nature is annoying. So up to you completely. And then we call plug end. So essentially what we would expect. Here is a assignment to me using Win32Yank. This was the most difficult part for me. So this is the Vimscript code that I grabbed from some, I think, Reddit comment. And here it is in Lua. So remember how we used the bracket syntax because we couldn't use this symbol? This applies pretty much everywhere. So we can't just use plus, we'll get an error. So we can just wrap it as a string and then in brackets, and now it works again perfectly. Also, I want to add that, don't you agree that, hold on, I want to flex. Give me a second. But this looks much cleaner than Vimscript. I mean, what is this? What is this? Completely, blech. This actually looks pretty good. I'm sure I'm not the only one that would think that Lua, even just looking through it, looks just better than Vimscript. That's almost reason enough, and especially now that I know that it's actually not that hard to switch, I recommend everyone to switch. Now, this sort of thing is once again explained in the blog that I link in the description. It's a small enough thing that I'll just let you read the blog. Everything that's explained in this video, more or less, is explained in the blog. Personally, I like watching videos to learn something rather than read something, so maybe you are the same way as well. Here I provide some more settings, and they are set as you expect. Often plugins have global variables that you can set, and once again you access that with G, but any normal option you just do opt. Now if you use the VsCode Neovim extension just as I do, in the readme of it, matter of fact, if it's Vimscript, then you do if exists, then do these commands, remappings, whatever. And then there's the else. If we are not in VsCode, do this instead. In Lua, it's if vim g VsCode. So it's a global variable which can either be false or true. So it returns true and then does these things, which is a nicer syntax for me personally than if exists this variable. That's kind of strange in my opinion. So key maps or other key bindings, let me explain them. So first of all, you use vim key map set to make a key map. Remember how in Vimscript you pretty much always had to use no remap. Maps were rare because if you use k in a map of k, it's going to be an infinite loop. That is no longer the case in Lua. Key maps or remappings are not recursive by default. And if I understand everything correctly, even recursive ones won't create an infinite loop. I might be completely wrong on that, so don't just trust me, but I think. So when making maps, there's this letter that you put before the word no remap or map to mean the mode that you want the remap to act in. Same thing here. The letters are completely the same, so you just pass it as the first parameter. Then the second parameter is the left side of the key map, so this essentially. And then what it actually does. What you usually do is this. So once again, the same exact thing. You just specify it as a string. But you can also specify a Lua function, which you can either declare in line, which I do here, or declare it somewhere else, and then just call it, I guess. So yeah. So there's the function keyword, and then there's also end. And between that, we actually have what we do with Lua. So we used fn before to call a function. There's VsCode notify, which is the Neovim extensions for VsCode API to call VsCode commands. Matter of fact, I have explained this in one of my previous videos, so if you're interested to know how this works, you can watch that. So yeah, I call the function, all that. And by the way, to add to that video that I just mentioned, I used to have a remap that I specified line and column to give it the range to select. Well, usually don't need to. Turns out, thanks to one commenter of mine, which found him. Thank you, Theo Limay, for mentioning this. I completely fucking didn't know. So if you're in visual mode, you can just use VsCode notify visual to pass the selection you currently have, instead of having to provide everything yourself manually. You don't need to, turns out. So you can just call the command, and here you go. Oh, and by the way, as far as I understand, you used to specify 1 or 0 in the last parameter, the leaf selection parameter. Now it's true or false, because that is how booleans are in Lua. Okay, that seems about it. Okay, this thing that I got helped with. Thank you, Gyatis, or Gitis, not sure, from the Vim Discord for helping me out with this. So say you want to call some function and then just execute a normal command. Well, that's how you do it, apparently. So you do your line and then vim command and then the command. What I thought you had to do is then do this, and then, no, turns out you don't need to. You just specify the actual command, the command in triangle brackets, and the enter are taken care of automatically. You don't have to worry about that. And in case you're wondering about norm, norm is a function or a command, not sure the difference. That's essentially does the commands in normal mode. I guess, yeah. I don't think there's a way to just specify k to mean, oh, do the command of k, meaning go up. No, you have to actually use norm. Yeah. And let's see other things that I haven't explained before. I guess, yeah, same letters. If there was no letter, to mean this is a remap for either visual, select, normal, or operator pending, then you just specify an empty string. So no remap or map with no letter before them is just that, an empty string. Cool. Now, often plugins give you a way to plug the plugin, I guess. So this is the Easy Align plugin that lets you align stuff. Let me show something off, like maybe this, and then a string, and then boom, and it's here, and what так? Yeah. Oh, I completely forgot that I'm using HK now. Damn, bro, that's crazy. So yeah, when you type GA, that's my personal remapping, now it expects a motion or a text object from you. You give that, and then you actually align. So for those types of things, you use plug. Sometimes in brackets, sometimes without. I have no idea why. But essentially, I think there's no way to do the plug thing in Lua if you're using Vim plug, which is still Vimscript. So you would have to just provide this in a string. So no fanciness there. Sometimes you will still have to use Vimscript by calling it. Okay, going next. And by the way, the Vim CMD that I mentioned before, somewhere up there, yeah, that's essentially what you use when you want to call Vimscript. And matter of fact, what you can do is Vim CMD and then this. Now everything that you type here is just Vimscript. So if you want to switch to Lua and then actually rewrite stuff bit by bit, what you can do is just put your entire init.vim and then pull stuff out from Vimscript to actually Lua. Like, that's quite amazing. It worked very surprisingly. I did not expect that. So that's an option. Cool. And as I have shown you off before, here I needed to make a remap for the double quote. And to be able to use it, I used single quotes around it. However, let's check something out right now. Because I'm pretty sure, yeah, you can also escape it with the backslash. So it really depends on what you like more. Cool. See how I still use set? I probably just don't know of a better method, but in case you don't know how to do something in Lua, you can just once again use vim.cmd and then actually specify your commands, or the double square bracket thing that I showed you earlier. So there's not really a reason not to switch. It's really easy, and it makes sense, it looks better, and even if you can't, you still can, you know? You won't have to split between a init.vim and a init.lua. If you don't know how to do something in Lua, you just wrap it in vim.cmd and here you go. Okay. Oh, right, Autocommands. I actually don't know what those are. As in, I don't know how Autocommands work. But this is essentially the syntax. Let me show you what they were before. When I actually figure out what they are. Okay, so Autocommand, and that part is vim.api.nvim create autocommand. Then what goes after it is the first parameter, and everything else you put in I think they're called tables in Lua, but I'm used to calling this an object. So pattern is, I guess, the thing that goes after the first word, and everything after it is just command. This is Vimscript. However, if you use callback instead, now everything here will be actual Lua code. So in case you know how to do this part, not in Vimscript but in Lua, or if you care, you can use callback instead to reach that. And I think that's about it. In case you're interested about this, it's in my studies repository. I leave a link to my GitHub profile under every video, and the blog that I mentioned many times, which I recommend heavily. It's so well written. It answered pretty much every single one of my questions. It's amazing. So definitely have a read of that. I also link it in the description. So if you learned anything today, first of all, I'm glad. Press a like, type some comment, definitely subscribe so you don't miss my content.